Hey folks, Ryan Wood here alongside Pete Dougherty. We're just filed our stories, Pete, here at FedEx Field, where the Packers lost today to go 1-1-1, which is awfully strange, but they're 1-1-1, lost 31-17 to Washington. I had them winning in my prediction 34-17, so I just needed to, I guess, turn the Packers into Washington. But I wrote about the Clay Matthews hit. Let's get to that later. What did you write about, Pete?
We've had this a couple times. People asking about Aaron Nagler. He left PackersNews.com just early in training camp. If you didn't know, he lived in New York City. He lives in New York City, and every game was an away game for him every week, and it was tough to do with he's got kids. So he left the Press Gazette. So that's why it's Ryan and I now. Big shoes to fill, but I'm sure there's a ton of questions here. What happened? What's up with the defense? Where you want to start?
Well, let's start where you wrote.
I wrote about the injuries that losing Wilkerson and possibly Bulaga. You know, there's a lot of injuries that teams can handle. It doesn't matter. There's a lot. Most guys are replaceable, but Wilkerson, their defense isn't very good, and that erodes one of the strengths of their defense is their run defense. They could put those three guys, Clark, Wilkerson, and Daniels. They could put all three of those guys out there at the same time and have a really good chance of stopping the run. I gotta believe. I mean, they took the guy off in a cart, and he went to the hospital in an ambulance. So you gotta think his season is over. So that erodes that. And then if Bulaga, they can't afford to lose either of their tackles. They just don't have any.
That right side right now.
They don't have any depth at tackle, and so Bulaga, he was unable to play in the second half because of back injury. If he's out for any long stretch, then they've got big game planning problems, and life gets a lot tougher for Aaron Rodgers, especially, you know, I mean, he can't protect himself with his feet right now.
And I wrote about Clay Matthews' hit. I wasn't going to. It really didn't have any effect on the game. They lost this game by a lot. I mean, there were plenty of self-inflicted reasons. Clay Matthews' hit didn't factor into it. It wasn't like last week. But it's such a big issue for the league as a whole. And like I wrote, I mean, one week it might cost the Packers a game. One week it might give them a win, and neither are really acceptable. The ambiguity, the confusion on the hit, the fact that it strikes to the core of how to play defensive football and plays that have been commonplace for decades are no longer allowed. It's a mess the league has got to figure out. So it continues to be a huge story. I was going to write about it, but it rises to that level of it's a huge issue for the league right now. But there are plenty of again, self-inflicted reasons the Packers lost, and I'm sure you'd like to talk about those.
A lot of stuff rolling in here, a lot of questions, so keep them coming. The Aaron Jones one just came by and caught my eye. You know, he was coming off a 2-game suspension, so he only had, 6 carries, 42 yards. He is so clearly a better runner than anybody else they have. I mean, they've got to play him more. They've got to give him the ball
6
more.
carries.
They got to get him the ball early in the game. They could have used that run game early, before they fell behind. So I'm in complete agreement with you. You know, yeah, Williams really does pass protect well. Montgomery provides some gadget stuff, but Montgomery should be the guy who's playing 15 snaps a game, and Jones should be splitting snaps with Williams, and in my mind probably getting more because he's such a threat with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, for halves. Look, the bottom line is the defense lost in the game. The offense did not help in the first half, but what the defense did in the first half lost in the game. You can't give up 28 points on the road in a half and win. And the offense didn't help. And frankly, the offense helped them, I think, a lot. You know, they only gave up 3 points in the second half, but the offense was ball control offense, that long drive to open the second half that took half the third quarter. The offense was a big reason why the defense was better in this. And I walk away from this, 28 points in one half, 3 in the other. The glass is half empty. I mean, this defense right now is a real issue.
I wonder also, somebody brought up why they didn't go into hurry up. I might have done that earlier in the fourth quarter than they did also. Will say they had their chances, the 4th down drop by Cobb and then the fumble that Cobb had. I mean, those kill drives. So there was enough time, but I'm in agreement. I think speeding things up and going into it. Because the no huddle isn't necessarily a speed up. It speeds the defense up and it stops substituting, but it doesn't they don't necessarily play fast. They can take the play clock all the way down. They often do. I could have seen going into the 2-minute offense before then.
Pete, a lot of people upset with Devon House. I don't know how you feel about this. To me, the issue is the safeties. I mean, and you hit it in your column about Earl Thomas this week, and I don't know if you have anything to add from what you wrote there, but to me, the issue is the safeties. They've got to get better safety play from Clinton Dix and Kentrell Bryce. A second straight week that we kind of leave that. You know, I called last week. I called the safeties play as a whole collectively mediocre, and that's kind of an insult to mediocre because it was far below that level today.
It was, you know, and look, Earl Thomas isn't a no-brainer. He's 29 years old, and guys that age can just go downhill like that. So you know, it was with a little trepidation that I wrote that, but he's still a good player. He probably would help him. I don't know if Dallas is going to end up trading for him or not. I don't know how he played today. They played Seattle today.
Well, Brian Gutekunst sees more of that. 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
I mean,
it does make you wonder.
Yeah. And the thing that when reading your column, the thing that I came away with was if you have assets, they dearly need a pass rusher. Throw your assets there. After the past 2 weeks, I'm not so sure that the safety play is any better than the lack of edge rushers. I mean, one of the huge issues on this defense right now is that they don't force turnovers. They have a turnover in each of the past 3 games. When you look at it, one was a coverage sack against Chicago at the very end of the game. Didn't really change the game, just ended a game that was already kind of settled at that point. You look at the last 2 weeks, both Clinton Dix interceptions, one a perfect pass to a wide open Laquan Treadwell goes through his hands. Today, Jordan Reed doesn't finish a route. Both of those are mistakes on the offense. So you have to make those plays. Those are important when the offense presents that to you, but there are no forced turnovers, and that's because there's no pass rush. So I still think that's a huge issue, but so is the safety play.
Yeah, then the pass rush, a lot of questions about the pass rush. Gilbert and Perry, I mean, they were both on the field. The pass rush isn't good, and that's where I wonder if Thomas can help them, is they can play a lot of single high safety and do more blitzing up front. You know, they're obviously got to do something to get some more pass rush. People asking about Josh Jones, he did not play today, did not suit up. I would think he'll be back next week if he was that close to playing this week.
You think Kevin King makes that big of a difference on defense? There's still a lot of Devon House questions.
I mean, they're better with him out there. Yeah, it probably does. It makes him tougher to throw on. You know, yeah, I think it does make a difference.
Bears just took first place. That's right. How about them apples? That's not what I would have expected through 3 weeks.
No, it's a long season, though. I mean, it's ridiculously early, and I've seen this team start 1-3, I think it was, one year, and make the playoffs.
With that said, what a stinker today by the Vikings. I mean,
Yeah.
the Packers laid a stinker out here.
What was it, 27-7? I think
27-6. 27-0 at halftime.
blown out at home.
What a stinker.
against the Bills.
You think overtime affected those two teams?
You know, I asked Rodgers that. I said, you know, did that take a lot out of both teams, and is that explained today, or is that just an excuse and coincidence? And he said excuse and coincidence.
Do you buy that? That's an awful big coincidence that two teams lost to teams that you thought were inferior coming in by a lot.
I kind of do. I tend to think it probably is just coincidence and the vagaries of the NFL.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff rolling in here. A lot of people venting. Yeah, the Bears do have a defense, but do they have a quarterback? Big question there.
Mark, I get what you're saying, but it's always a long season. That's why it is important to keep the larger context in play. The question I have right now is where is this team at 1-1-1? I mean, it's such a weird place to be. Today was their first defeat of the season, but it was also they've through 3 games they've only won once. So I asked Aaron Rodgers the same question after the game. He said it's a work in progress. I think it clearly is. You know, they just got Aaron Jones back today. The run game's not now what it's going to be at the end of the season if they all stay healthy. I think they're going to figure that out as it goes along. With that said, these games are really important, and you need to figure that out. The September game counts the same as it does in December.
You know, another question about Aaron Jones, and you know they came into this game and the plan was that they were going to use him as their secondary back. I think he didn't come in until late in the first quarter, and I think it was a poor job of McCarthy adapting because Jones ran the ball well immediately. I'd have kept him on the field. Now, they practiced doing all the other stuff, and they want to stay with that as long as they can, and I get all that. but when the guy's running that well, as good a pass protector as Williams is, a better pass protection is the threat of the run. So I'm with you. I would have played Aaron Jones and fed him the ball a lot more. I think if they learn anything from this game, it's that they got to get that guy on the field earlier and get him the ball more often. Did you nothing come across? Relax. Well, that's what Aaron Rodgers said. He would tell his teammates that they should go home and what he was going to do what he's going to do, and have a glass of scotch and go to bed.
Yeah, Jordy Nelson had a big day today. Look, receiver's not an issue on this team, and I say that knowing that Randall Cobb had a bad day, and he's going to have some plays that he wanted back. But the closest comparison on this team to Jordy Nelson and his production, the hole that he left and was replaced, was Geronimo Allison, who's been really good, a bright spot actually through 3 games. We'll see how it works out over the course of the season. I'm just not ready. I'm not ready to say the Packers made a mistake letting Jordy Nelson go, despite his big game, because they needed some of those guys on the defensive side. It hurts, obviously, losing Muhammad Wilkerson. Jimmy Graham's going to pay off, I think, long term. And receiver's just not an issue. If it was an issue, I would tell you something differently. It's just not an issue on this team.
That will be a really interesting game, when the Packers go out to Los Angeles to play the Rams. The Rams are looking like the team in the NFC early on, for sure. They've got a ton of talent. So that'll be a good barometer game. It won't make or break anybody's season, but it'll tell us, I'm sure it'll reveal some things about the Packers and the Rams for that matter.
Davante Adams, what do you make of his play so far?
Been okay, he a couple of big drops last week, and they would have been tough catches in the end zone against Minnesota, but they were catchable balls. Either one of them would have been a huge touchdown, put the game away. But he's been okay.
Had a weird play today. That play where he got open against kind of in single coverage, and the ball was behind him. It was kind of a miscommunication. Either he should have settled into the hole, or Rodgers should have led him as he continued his route. You don't see those guys usually. We talk about Jordy Nelson. You never saw him and Rodgers and Jordy Nelson have that type of miscommunication. They were always on the same page. Type of play that you don't often see Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers on different wavelengths, and they were there.
The Rams were very active in the offseason. Now, to some degree, they've got more not to some degree, they definitely have more flexibility. They got a rookie quarterback on his rookie contract, or not a rookie quarterback, but a quarterback on his first contract, so that gives them more money to spend. But that's not the only thing at work here, and they did go aggressively after guys, and they kind of pushed things with their salary cap and their budget.
Question about where is Mercedes Lewis? I think you might see him more and more here as. We'll see what the injuries are like. But
if Bulaga is out,
yeah,
he's going to have to play some, because they're going to have to help protect on the right side. I wonder how that'll affect Matthews going forward.
I asked him that, and he responded the way I think he has to. I've been trying to think myself, like, if put yourself in that position, and how would you, from a human level, respond? He said that there's no hesitation to hit the quarterback, and that he's going to play the same way he always has. I don't know what you think about that. On one hand, I see it as you don't want to change what got you here, and he's had a lot of success playing the way he has. On the other hand, something has to change, because you can't keep having a roughing the passer penalty every week.
It's going to cost you games.
He's, according to ESPN Stats and Info, the first player since at least 2001, the first year that their records go back, that has had a roughing the passer in each of the first 3 games of the season.
Kendricks did have a huge drop, and
it was,
as a couple reporters pointed out on Twitter, he had more than his share of drops in camp too, so it wasn't that much of a shocker. I do wonder. I mean, probably not, but Robert Tonyan was really impressive catching the ball in camp. I know Eric Bronchek and we were kicking around. We wondered if they would have had to cut a tight end, we'd have cut Kendricks before we'd have cut Tonyan.
I think it was Omar that just asked Devon House over Lindsey Pipkins. Yes, I would go with that again. What do you think?
Yeah, it's probably kind of splitting hairs. You're in trouble either way if those guys if they're playing a lot for you. I mean,
I like having a veteran on the field. And look, I go back to The real issue today, and I get that Devon House had a bad PI in the end zone. The real issue today, when it comes from pass coverage, comes to the secondary, was safety play. There were a lot of issues.
Important question from Sarah about Rodgers' leg. It did appear during the game that he grabbed after one of his runs and scrambles, that he grabbed the back of his other leg. But both he and McCarthy expressed surprise that anyone thought that he had hurt his hamstring and denied that he had. Now, I'll caution everybody, injury information in the NFL coming from the team is really, really unreliable, but both acted surprised that people were asking about the hamstring. So take that for whatever it's worth. Take a couple more and then wrap this up, Ryan.
Yeah, let me ask you this. What's your one thing that you're going to do? You talked about the injuries, but moving forward, what did it today mean going forward? What are you going to take out of this?
Honestly, the only things I took out of it were the injuries, those two injuries to Wilkerson and Bulaga. Those could be longer term problems, and get Aaron Jones the ball. Those are the
6 carries blows my mind.
Teams lose games, in and of itself. It's it's not a huge thing. I mean, look at Minnesota. Do you think Minnesota's season's over because they got blown out at home? I mean, of course not.
That's to pick them to win the division.
But if I'm the Packers, I'm really, really concerned about right tackle if Bulaga can't play, and their run defense, which was one of the strengths of this team, one of the few strengths of the defense, now just took a hit that it doesn't wreck it, but it certainly erodes it.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you, everyone, for participating, for watching. We appreciate it. From FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland, he's Pete. I'm Ryan. Keep checking PackersNews.com for extensive coverage of the Packers' first loss of the season, and as they move forward and now host a suddenly resurgent Buffalo Bills team. Maybe catching them at the wrong time. Take care, everybody.